Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. This is again your woman on the board, Vera Sompon, and today we are having the conversation with our historian, Dr. Jerry, and she will be talking today about the effect of racism on Black women. Before we get to go into the conversation of today, I would like us to remind ourselves of the death of George Floyd because it's as a result of his death that we started up the racism talk. And the racism talk was created so that African people can come together, have a space on their own to have conversations that will inspire them, will encourage them, will empower them, that we will be able to exchange together. But most especially after being empowered, inspired, and exchanged, we want to take actions that is going to be long-lasting actions to change ourselves and to change the community. And of course, my desire and our desire, the desire of the entire team, is that we become stronger after the conversation. Welcome with me, ladies and gentlemen, our doctor, our historian, Dr. Jerry. Jerry, you're welcome. But before we get to say, Jerry, I hear from you. I really want to appreciate you all for taking your time. I say thank you, particularly because I think that you are giving out the gift of your time. And I think time is money. And if you're seated here, you're with us, it's because you have trusted us with your time. You are encouraged by us. And of course, we want to say thank you. Thank you for taking out your time. And I'm sure you're going to like the conversation today. Dr. Jerry, you're welcome. How are you today, ma'am?
I'm very fine. Thank you. Thank you for having me once again.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to have you. You're one of those that one can have over and over again and not get tired. So I'm already planning a next conversation again with you. I do not know when, but I'm sure that I'm already planning another conversation because you're one of those that when one talk with you, one won't continue to talk with you. Ma'am,
Thank
today we
you.
are talking about the effect of racism on Black women. And I'm so super excited about our conversation today because I know that you are an historian and not only any kind of historian, you've searched and researched on the history of Black women. This is your platform, ma'am. Tell us, what's the effect of racism on Black women?
Thank you very much. So, first of all, I would like to start by thanking again the community who voted us in on the for the communal politique. Thank you very much. It would not have been possible without the support, and of course, so many people went. And it's true, Black votes do matter. We are very excited because we got in, and also very excited that also in the Integrationsrat that we also got 3 people from the community with whom we are definitely going to work with. So thank you very much. As Vera said, I am a historian. I studied history at the University of Cologne, and I also did my PhD in history, in international history at the University of Trier. And one of the reasons why I studied history is because I think we need people who can be able to tell our stories. Not all of us should be doctors or lawyers, but we also need other people who can be able to tell our stories. And I'm very fascinated by storytellings that are, passed on from one generation to the next. And that motivated me to be a historian. I also must say that I had a very good teachers, wonderful teachers at the University of Cologne and the University of Trier. Those were Professor Norbert Finch, Professor Dr. Ursula Lemkul, and Professor Eva Bishop, who gave me the opportunity and the space to be able to, discover myself, to be able to, deal with critical topics and issues that really do concern us as Black women. I have always said this, and I will not stop saying this. I think women are not only the carriers of the revolution, but the revolution is carried by women, and a lot of things will not be possible if women were not there. All great men, all great achievements, most of them have always been achieved because there were always women behind it. Black women in particular, because I'm particularly interested in Black women. I think we are just phenomena. Nothing can put us down. And I am really, really, really fascinated by the fact that, no matter what happens to us as Black women, that we still rise. So that is one of the motivation why I studied history. And of course, because I also come from a lineage of women, starting from my grandmother to my aunties to my own mother. And so it's a kind of history that is being carried on and given on from one generation to the next. And so since me, myself, I'm a mother of two, and I also have a daughter, she's also going to carry that, that generation history, or carry it further. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much. I'm curious to see how our generation is going to carry our history further, but they have to carry a history that they really know, right? If they don't know the history, how do they carry this history forward? Now, that takes me to the question number one, ma'am. What motivated you? I know that you're a historian, and you said in your conversation that we all cannot be doctors. I agree with you, right? Now, but what was the motivation behind you studying history, and particularly the history of the Black woman?
So actually, a lot of people who know me know that I'm fascinated by the Black Power movement of the 1960s. And I'm also very much fascinated by the phenomena, incredible African women that we have in our own continent. I'm very much fascinated by Wangari Maathai, who is my role model and one of the reasons why I joined Klima Fonde. I'm also highly motivated by women like Uni Mandela. And I feel that in most cases, Black women and or African women, if I may use that term interchangeably, they're always left out of history. We do or read history from a male perspective, but never from a female perspective. And it doesn't matter where we are. Even in North America, it's still the same thing. When I went to Canada, it was almost the same thing that, we have incredible, amazing African women or Black women doing a lot of wonderful things, not only as community activists, but even women who are behind powerful men like Malcolm X, like Martin Luther King, all this, or even Patrice Lumumba, or even Steve Biko. We never hear about anything about these women, what happened to them, or we don't even have narratives about these women or their experiences. And their experiences are always, understood or portrayed or represented as if they were also from a male perspective. And so I am very much fascinated by this, by our histories, or what I call her histories and experiences, because they do shape us in a different way. Black women or African women, have different histories. And our different experiences are very fascinating. Our stories, the kind of things that I've just said before, the kind of generation heritage that we pass on, or generational culture, even if we're in the diaspora, that we pass on from one generation to the next, are carried out by women. We are the gatekeepers of culture. So that's why I'm very much fascinated by African women and Black women. And as I said, in most cases, we're always invisible. Society wants to make us invisible. And, white supremacy does its best to make sure that, we portray or represent Black women in a negative light, in a negative picture. And that's why I am a student or a follower of something that we call Africana womanist or Africana womanism, which I believe, it says some people, or the first person who started talking about it was an African American Black intellectual, and Hudson Wims. And she's using this Africana womanism framework, to be able to express the different experiences that we as Africana women have. But this is not something new. This is something that our foremothers have been doing in Africa for such a long time. But we can see again, how Africa is portrayed and how the African woman is portrayed. It seems, or it's, history tries to rewrite our histories by writing us out. So even her being an African American woman and being able to understand that, that these are traditions and cultures that come from Mother Africa and have been able to, been carried over the transatlantic or were carried over the New World is very fascinating for me. And and the fact that we have so many great African women whom we don't know by name, so their histories are still underneath, or their histories are still hidden, but they are doing, or they did a lot of work to make sure, that some of us are here where we are. And I think that is very important, that also my generation thinks about it, how, if it wasn't for these women, where would we be? If it wasn't for our aunties, our mothers, where would we be right now? And that's why I became a historian, because I want to tell our stories. I want to understand our experiences, and all our experiences cannot be put in one framework, and I'm very aware of that. But I think it's very important that we talk about our experiences, in particular as Black women, because we are affected by different systems and different, institutions than other people. So I cannot speak for other people. I can only speak for, for what I know about Black women and my own experiences. And I think that Black women are always left out in many of the discourses that go around. Yet we are actually the unifying factor, and we are the ones that hold everything together.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Some years back, when I began the work that I do, and I'm passionate about my work as a social worker, I started up the business institution, the Sompon Social Service. I began telling the stories of the Black people, not just specifically the Black women, but the Black people. And in the course, I realized that women became now for me very fascinating, because I kept asking the questions. Why is it that, especially, let's take an example in a company, you see two people, a man and a woman. The woman is doing an amazing, great job, but she never talks about her job. She only wants to do this job. And the man is there with a lot of mistakes and really actually not that really, really incredible like the woman, and he takes all the glory of that woman. And when you ask the woman in 2 years to come, where do you want to be, she says, oh, I'm just doing my job. And then when you ask the man is always ready to say, I want to go to the next level. For me, this is also something that has to do with, I don't know if it's history. Can you tell us, where is this attitude coming from, that women hardly talk about their own self and their own story, what they do, their achievements, and they always pull themselves down with so much of self-criticism?
I think this is something that we have learned from the society. This is something that society has learned to silence the experiences, and in particular the experiences of Black women. Because once you start talking about your experiences, then people would start stamping you as being loud, you're being stubborn, or why are you
Oh, I know
complaining?
that.
Everything is fine. Why would you be
Mm,
complaining, right? But the fact is, I think we as Black women work more in a community, more like a community, and we are more aware of not only ourselves as individuals but collectively, right? And I think a very good quote for that will be a quote from Wangari Maathai, who said, if you educate a man, you educate an individual. If you educate a girl, you educate a community, right?
powerful.
Because we don't think only about ourselves, but we think about, the whole community, the well-being of everybody. And we have learned, or we have been taught to be silent about our own experiences. We are silenced in all possible ways. Once you start talking about your problems, or once you start talking about your success, then it's always going to be pulled into the negative. Nobody is going to uphold you. In most cases, nobody's going to uphold you and say, oh, see, this is a great woman, look at what she has done. And for me, I always take a very good example of Winnie Mandela, because I really think she was a powerful woman. Not only powerful in terms of her, of her structure, or, her body language, but even the kind of work that she did. When Mandela was in jail, she was the one who was the forefront of the freedom fighters.
That
She
is
is the one
true.
who went everywhere to say, release Mandela. She was the one who, fought for the unity and for the liberation of South Africa. And yet, the kind of history that is written about her is always negative. All that
Exactly.
positive work that she did, all that revolutionary work and revolutionary ideas that she had in the 1960s and even after, they are all done away with. And the only thing that we have to talk about, or we want to talk about, or history, or some people in history who dominate the discourse want us to know about Winnie Mandela, is all the negative things she did. And that way, all her work is, is put to zero,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's the problem, because once people think, or once the structures think that you're such a strong woman, what happens is that they try to put you down, right? And this is almost the same case with Wangari Maathai. When she was talking in the 70s, in the 80s, nobody was listening to her. She was put to jail and she was told she was crazy. But then look, 2020, all those ideas that he had in the 1970s are exactly what now everybody who is in climate fund, or
Funded.
people who are doing climate politics, is the same
Mm-hmm.
politics that she was doing in the 1970s and 80s, and nobody listened to her, and
Mm-hmm.
she didn't get the credit until very much later in her life. And this is because some people sat down and thought, oh, this woman is doing something that is really incredible with the Green Belt movement. But before, who was
Mm-hmm.
talking about her?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody, right? So we
Now,
have
this thing that now it takes me to asking you this direct question, Doctor. It means that we have to empower women to tell their stories themselves, because if you have to wait that some other person tell your story, then they will always tell the story that is not correct. Now, so the question would be, how do we empower women, Black women in particular, to be able to come up to tell their stories themselves without waiting for acclamation, applause, or again, approval from any other human?
by creating safe spaces in terms of by giving the women the opportunity to speak for themselves. I'm very much aware that we are I am talking in a very collective way when we talk about Black women, right? Because we all we are different and we have different experiences, which are shaped by class, gender, race, religion, sexuality, and many other categories that come into being a human being. I'm very much aware of that, but there are some experiences that we share that bind us together, that kind of bring us in a sort of a sisterhood, that can empower us, right? Women are very powerful, and this is what I say, and I've been saying for a very long time, and I've also realized myself that we are very powerful given the opportunity, right? Given that space to develop, given that space to talk about ourselves and not talk about other people. And that's why I said, the frameworks that I used to talk about Black women, the whole thing of feminism, fine, that's feminism, but that's more for the white women. That's for their own problems, their own issues. But we have our own issues, which cannot just be put into one category, which cannot just be put into one framework, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's a long history that is behind our experiences. It's a long history that is behind us being empowered, or breaking away with silence.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that women have to be encouraged to come out and talk about their experiences, their problems. Uh, we ourselves as women, our mothers, our aunties, and we as a younger generation have to have that conversation that pass down to the different generations. We
Mm-hmm.
have to acknowledge those who have been there before us. We have to be able to say thank you, because sometimes we do forget to say thank you. And at this
Mm-hmm.
point, I would like to thank my own mother because behind every successful young woman, there's always a mother behind it, right? And there's not only a man, but there's also a huge family, a huge
Mm-hmm.
number of women behind that success.
Of
So
course.
my mother has been one of them, because without her, I would not been able to do a lot of things that I've been able to do. I would not have been able to finish my PhD, because if I have to travel, who do I leave my children to? I have to leave them to my mother, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sorry for
Amazing.
that. Uh,
Amazing.
so so and the fact that that she taught us to want to be educated, the loving of books, even having that space at home to be able to express yourself, to be able to talk to your mother that you want to do this, and even our own mothers and our own aunties, acknowledging and saying, okay, if this is the path you want to go, then we are going to support you, right? And this, I also have this for my grandmother, from my aunties, and for my nieces. So we need these connections. And my generation has to learn that, those who were before us, they paved the path, the way for us, the path for us. And we have to acknowledge every time that they do that, because by us acknowledging and us naming is giving power to these women.
That is
When
true.
And even when some of them are no longer alive, every time we mention Wangari Maathai, every time we mention Winnie Mandela, every time we ask what happened to the wife of Steve Biko, every time we ask what happened to all these incredible, amazing African women who built these incredible Black men, then we have to call them by their names and give them power and give them life.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this inspirational conversation. Now let's go to the conversation on racism. How does racism affect the Black woman specifically?
Racism affects us all in different degrees and in different levels, right? Because as I said before, we don't have the same experiences. There are experiences that I have that another woman might not have, or another young woman might not have, because you're just not in that space. So, for instance, when I started studying, I had no experience of racism. As I said, I had incredible and amazing professors behind me. And I always had so-called safe spaces. So I was able, to have that possibility of expressing myself, to critically ask and analyze. And one of the things that really motivated me is that my professor always gave me the feeling, or, insisted that there's nothing that I ask that is wrong. So we are affected by racism in different ways. So for my experience, for instance, as being a Black woman in the academia, some of the racism that I have experienced is, going sometimes to conferences and meeting, some very well-known people, and who would actually think that I am a cleaner. I'm the one cleaning the place, the conference rooms, or, giving me their teacups that I should put them away, or, just thinking that I'm not even part of that conference. There's an incident, me and another friend of mine, we were actually in a conference, and they refused to serve our food because they thought we were not part of the conference. So we all experience racism very differently. But I think because Black women, as givers of life, we are the mothers, we are the sisters, we are, the mothers and the aunties, that everything that affects our children, everything that affects our husband, everything that affects our family, always affects us. If you have small children and they go to school and they experience racism, that does something for you. If you yourself, you go to the supermarket, you experience racism, you go to the train, we experience racism everywhere. But there's a difference in how we experience it, or how we want to interpret how we experience that kind of racism. So for me, for instance, another form of racism that I experience is with my hair, because I have long hair and I have dreadlocks. That I would have just people pull my hair, right? Which, sometimes people say, oh, they were just curious, they just wanted to see how the hair is. Okay, fine, it could be that they're curious, but at the same time, I do understand that it's not only curiosity, but that curiosity has also something to do with a kind of representation and a kind of mind, or a construction about a Black woman, right? And Black women are always represented in a very negative light, as I said before. We are always reduced to our bodies, right? And not what we can be able to do. So racism affects us because it affects our families. We are, the kind of pictures that represent Black women in the media, even when you go to certain places, are always, most of the times, are always racist. And as an Africana womanist, those things, that affect us collectively as a community, they affect us as women, because if we are the givers and we are the caregivers, if we are the mothers and we are, we nurture our communities, then it means we are also affected in a kind of a double, or even in a three-step way, or even more, because we are affected because of our class, of our gender, and also because of our race, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the intersectionality, of all those things connected affect Black women. And racism, I have a feeling that we are always affected by racism because of the fact that we are the center of the family. We
Mm-hmm.
are the ones who are, we are in the middle of everything. So if the Black woman is the center, then it means that anything that happens to our communities is also, affecting us physically, emotionally, and
Mm-hmm.
also, even our bodies. Sometimes how we react, to some incidents, is also another way of how most Black women are affected by racism. But the thing is that in most cases, we are not supposed to talk about it. We should not say that's racism. Or people always tend, or people want us to say, oh, that has got nothing to do with me. Or no, that has never happened to me, so it doesn't happen to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, different experiences, but there are things that we share as Black women. And so I think
That
we are
is.
always affected by racism.
Thank you so much. Mary says something that reminded me again. I lecture at the University of Esslingen, also on the area of racism, critical pedagogy. And this is always a question that comes up, or I always have to refer back to the days where they took Africans in the zoo. And Mary, you're just reminding me again, and I'm feeling very, very funny now on my body how they could take us to the zoo. I mean, they took our women, our mothers in the zoo, and they became a center of attraction so that people could pass by and look at them, touch them as though they were animals. This is really degrading in a level that one can't talk again, right? And this has not been healed because the more we refuse talking about it, the more we put these Black women in pains because we are denying what their ancestors or the former Black women have gone through. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly, and I do agree. It's like going to the zoo. We had the famous case of the I think Hugo Newton. I think that's the. Excuse if that's not how you pronounce it, but it's this woman who was taken over and her body parts were showed, right?
Mhm.
Like you could go and see her body parts. The whole thing of gynecology, the whole science behind it, started by experiencing with African American women, with Black women in the you know so there have always been this case of history of dehumanizing Black women, and still continues up to date, right?
But what did
Uh,
Black women do? Why? What did Black women do? And this is not only on the side of the white supremacists. It happened and affect us even amongst the community. What did Black women do to deserve all this way of degrading them?
I think that's a philosophical question, but from a historical point of view, I would say it's how Black women are presented,
Mhm.
how they have been constructed, and how they have been dehumanized. Because you can only be able to do that if you take away the humanity of somebody, and
Mm,
because we live in a patriarchal world that says that a woman has no rights, or a woman is not allowed to express herself, then we found ourselves as Black women always on the lowest case, always on the lowest ladder of society, right? Like, and it still goes on because, we think that Black women are weak, right? Because every time that we try to speak up, there's always someone who's trying to put a lid on our mouth, right? If it's
mhm,
not putting a
mhm.
lid on our mouth, it's trying to hold us down and say, don't talk about that. That has got nothing to do with you. Complain too much. You should stop complaining. But if we think about how we as Black women are survivors, right? How we've been able to rise every time they try to put us down, we rise, right? And how phenomenal
Angelo.
we are. Yes, and how phenomenal we are, right? That every
Mm,
time, even when our own Black men try to put us down, we always stand, and they cannot do without us. That's why I
mm,
said Black women are revolutionaries. They are the carriers of the revolution. They are the carriers of liberation. And in us, within us, in our own souls and in our own bodies, we carry liberty. If it wasn't for, if it wasn't for the Black women who survived the ordeal of the transatlantic slavery and were brought to the New World, and now we have generations of, generations and generations of other of African Americans or African people in the diaspora, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we still rise, right? So nothing really holds us down. The thing, and we have to know and understand that we are so powerful and that we
Mm-hmm.
can achieve, and we have achieved a lot even now. So that's
Of
why I'm going back
course.
again to the case of acknowledging. When we teach ourselves to acknowledge those who have come before us, then we see that we have been able to achieve a lot,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that
Mm-hmm.
Black women cannot be kept down. If it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't for the Black women, a lot of things will not be possible, right? A
Mm-hmm.
lot of things, we will not be talking about, we will not be talking about racism. We will not be talking about how to put Black women's experiences or try to understand Black women's experiences. We will not
Mm-hmm.
be having these discussions about how we, as women, as a community, are also the safekeepers of our Black men and our Black children, our male children, right? So we are not only protecting ourselves, but you're also protecting our own men and our own boys, right? So we have a huge responsibility, and that's why I always say, hands up and rise up for the Black woman, because we are more than just, that those, the body parts, right? We are beyond
Wow.
that.
This is amazing. So we just give an applause to the Black woman, because indeed,
Yeah.
the Black woman is really the powerful woman, and without her, we will have maybe a dysfunctioning world. Nonetheless, I have a question. This question is really um, it's for me always very challenging, because we know the stories of Black women. We know how Black women are powerful. We know the roles of Black women, how they can influence the environment, influence the society, influence families. Yet I ask myself questions over and over. One free wrote it somewhere and said, um, and I just want to paraphrase it: if Black women, as powerful as we are, could really transmit their strength into their families and transmit not only the role of gender, but the strength of a woman in their family, so that when the children, be it the man and the woman, are growing up, that they understand that they are both strong, and that they have, and especially the woman, have the abilities, the potentials to be extremely, exceedingly great. How do we help women really understand this and do this in their homes? Because I believe that everything begins also from home. So, how do we encourage women to start preaching this greatness even upon their daughters at home, in their homes, and make their sons also understand the importance of respecting the woman and the womanhood?
Um, I think we have always done that. I think when we look back at the African history before, we start talking about colonialism, post-colonialism, and slavery, this is what was happening in the African continent. This has always been the role of women, that, we teach um, our families, or that we hold our families together. And I think even up to today, that still happens. The difference is how it's done in different families, regarding where you come from, the background, all that matters also in how you transmit and how you teach your children about the benefit and the wealth, or the position of girls, or the position of boys within the home. And this, I always have this thing of saying, Western orocentric theories about Black women or about Black families can't function for us, because we have different ideas of what a family is. We don't have this nuclear family that is only mother, father, children, but we have, an extended family, which matters a lot in how, in how culture and in how knowledge is passed on from one generation to the next. Again, coming back, we have always been doing that. The Western way of thinking tries to tell us that how we think is wrong, and that's why they try to enforce or impose their ways of thinking about the Black family, or what the role of the Black woman in the family is. But in the African tradition, Black women have always been powerful. They have always been transmitting this knowledge. And for someone like Shaka Zulu was only king because of the Queen Mother, right? So
Mm.
this knowledge has always been there, but we are so much, or some of us are so much influenced by this Western way of thinking, this orocentric
Okay.
way, that we
Mm.
forget we have always been there, we have always been powerful, we forget that we have always been the path makers, right? If we think that all humanity came from Africa, then the black woman is the mother of all races, right? So if
That
she's
is
the mother,
true.
if she's the mother of all races, then she has always been there and she has always been transmitting this knowledge. But the kind of systems that have been implemented to always try and, to put stones, I always say, the system tries to put stones on the ways of Black women so that they do not continue, because they know that if we empower Black women, then the world will definitely change,
I
right?
understand.
And we can see that by the different movements that have been there, that have been coined by women, that have been formed by women, right? So I think this knowledge transmission has always been there. African women have always taught their male children to respect women. They have always taught their daughters that they are more than their gender, right? And even before, when I think in a lot of in some African cultures where they would say a boy child is more worth than a girl child, even that thinking has already changed, because they have seen, if it's a girl that you educate and she's able to be successful, she always comes back home to develop, right? While sometimes male children don't,
They go
right?
and they go. They go and
And
start
they
up their own families and they go.
and even there, then they meet women who make sure that they are that they keep their positions and that they're successful and that the families run properly, right? Can you imagine a world where men would have to run families? What would happen? And I'm not only talking about families, but that nuclear family, but I'm also talking families in terms also of communities, right? That how that would be, it will not function. It will almost be impossible. So I think it has always been there, but we only need to educate ourselves about our own history and the position of African women in in the African society, even before we have all the, before slavery and and colonialism. If that was not possible, then we will not be having African American women, or women or Black women in the New World thinking about something, or coming up or doing something like Africana womanism, because they understand that it comes from somewhere. They understand it has a root, and that root is in the African continent.
And it means that we really need a lot of historians to come back again, teach again, remind us of our history, even before colonialism, because
Yeah.
I think colonialism, slavery, and all that came like Mary is saying, the white supremacy broke the core of the Black family methodically. And that is true. I think that this was really the coming of colonialism, slavery, is the center of this destruction, which is what we are talking today, racism, because we can't talk about racism without talking about the white supremacy. We can't talk about racism without talking about the fact that we have colonialism that came again to emphasize the white supremacy. And this white supremacy, we have unconsciously or again consciously internalize them, have them in us, and they are transforming even our systems that were really solid systems to build the community and to keep
Mm-hmm.
us going, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, we have a lot to do to even remind again our fellow Black men. Hey, fellow Black men, you is listening to us. If you're out there and after this, that you're going to listen to us, that you remember that the Black woman was actually the motherhood, and the intention was to sustain, to keep, to preserve, and therefore there is a need for this great respect. Then come my question: where did they ever come up with the idea that the Black woman is weak, or that women
I,
are weak?
I think it's because of our strength, right? Our strength. And I am sure, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this in public, but I just say it. I think there's nothing more dangerous than a Black woman who is empowered and self-conscious.
That's true.
Because once you become critical of the systems around you and the institutions around you, it means that you bring about change. And of
That's
course, the
true.
system doesn't want you to bring change. So in order to make sure that, a black women stay in their space, or, stay in their place, we have to make sure that we always degrade them. We have to make sure that we always portray them in a certain way. We always have to reduce them to their body parts, not to what they are capable of doing, right? So it's a system that is behind it. It's a white supremacy system that is behind it, that is always trying to put the black woman down, because they know, if I am educated and I understand the system, the possibilities that my community or my family will then understand what's going on around them is 100%. Because if I'm the safekeeper of the culture, I'm the gatekeeper of our culture and of the community and of the family, it means I'm passing on this knowledge to everybody within around me, right?
Mm-hmm,
So it means
mm-hmm,
that I'm empowering and upholding everybody that is in my surrounding. And
mm-hmm,
that, of course, is not, is not what white supremacy wants. White
mm-hmm.
supremacy wants to teach you, that, or even feminism, white feminism, right? Let's start there, because it's white feminism that teaches you how you think as an African woman is wrong, and how
Mm-hmm.
they think, and what, their ideas and their ideals is what you as a black woman or as an African woman should be aiming for. But that's false, because we have different experiences. Their experiences cannot speak for us. That's why you have different waves of feminism, right? That's why you have different ways of thinking about the black women's experiences. White feminism does not speak for us. These are middle class white women who are privileged, who are talking about, oh, we don't want to, or we want to start working. Well, African women have been working forever,
You
right?
know?
We have been doing the same thing as, yeah. We have been trolling and doing the same thing that our black men do. And this thing of, trying to separate the black woman from the black man is also kind of a construct, right? Is
Mm-hmm,
also a construct of, like, Mary said, of white supremacy, of really trying to break the black families, right? Because
mm-hmm,
once you take one part of the black family, then they start saying you're dysfunctional, right?
mm-hmm.
But they call us dysfunctional because we do not have the same experiences as they do. We do not have the same privileges. And how we understand our culture and how we understand our position as African women is always questioned, because they think, oh, but that's not the way I think. Then maybe, you think that way because you come from a society that doesn't respect women. That is not true. African culture has always been respecting women. We have always been the center of everything. But that those ideologies coming in, and us as black women internalizing them and thinking, yeah, I'm a feminist. That's why I say I'm not a feminist. I'm an African womanist, which means that I believe in the whole African, the whole unit,
The
both men
holistic
and
approach
women.
of it.
Exactly, right? That, I cannot be, if I cannot be free if the black man is still in bondage, and the
That's
the
true.
black man cannot be free if the black woman is still in bondage. So we need to work together in order for us to be free, both of us, because one being free does not benefit anybody. We'll still be oppressed, will still be discriminated against. But imagine the force and the kind of, united front we would create if our black men and black women came together and worked as one, right?
Hmm.
That energy, that revolutionary idea, right? The differences that we will bring about. I mean, it will be incredible. Then white supremacy will not even have anything on us,
Mm-hmm,
because once we are united and once we understand that we are more than our race and we are more than our gender, that
mm-hmm,
we are a unit of family and we are a people with a history and a root, and that we are people who have, we are kings and queens, and none of us is a slave, and that actually when we work together, that we can achieve more than when we work against each other. When a black man doesn't respect a black woman, and you teach your sons, or your sons and your daughters see that you do not respect the giver of life, yeah, the carrier of life, then you are not only destroying a community of people, but you're also disrespecting yourself as a black man. The same way, if a black woman does not respect a black man, yeah, happens the same thing, because society keeps on teaching us how to hate our black men, right? And this generational trauma is going to be carried on when we also have our own sons, right?
mm-hmm,
When we start, questioning our own sons, when we do not let them, have, breathe, right? I call it sometimes you are suffocating even our small boys, because we were saying, oh, you should not be doing this because this is not for boys. You should not be doing this because this is only for girls. Who said so?
Oh, so this story came. We thought it was the African story that they say that the Bantu story that men should not do this, women should not do this. But now you are making us understand. No, it wasn't. It was the case.
Who was
Women were.
there?
Oh,
Who are these people who wrote about that? Who are these people that are writing about our histories as Bantus, and how men and women, in which position men and women had in the African society before before slavery and before colonialism? These are
mhm.
white people and some travelers writing about what they think they know about Africa.
So they are writing again their story and transforming their story into our story, and we are buying into it and believing the story, and then oh God help us.
So that's
This
why it's
is
very important.
interesting.
So that's why it's very important that we learn where we come from. It's important that we learn our roots, and it's important that we teach ourselves about our own histories, where we are coming from, how far we have come, and where we are heading to. Because only by then do we realize that even before the white men came, we were there.
Tell me, ma'am, if you want to help someone now and you say we have to learn our history, we have to know our history, how do someone get to start learning their history step by step? Where do I begin? Let's say I want to really know my history. Where do I begin? Because there are tons of books out there, but most of these books again are written by the very people we tend to discard now because they have distorted the history. And now, but I want to know my history. So how do we help these people who want to know their history to get to start somewhere?
Start with your own family, right? Your own family has its own history, and that history is passed down from one grandmother to the next, right?
Mhm,
Sometimes I also do ask my mother about our own history, and I am always amazed by how much she knows and how little that I know about our own history, right? Which always
mhm,
makes me even more motivated and wanting to know more about my own family history. Um, and Also, we should start, with our own African heroes. We should start with our own African women who
mhm,
are, as I said in the beginning, are invisible.
mhm.
Uh, they're invisible everywhere in the history books. They're invisible, in most of the narratives. So let's start by thinking about what was the position of African women before all these stories started,
Mhm,
right? And then you'll find out that we were in a very powerful position.
mhm,
And if we continue talking about our histories, if we continue uplifting our own children, and not only the girl child, but also the men, right? Even the boy child needs to be educated. We all need to understand where we are coming from and
mhm,
where we are heading to. History is what keeps us together. It reminds us. It's a culture that cannot just go away, right? And when we start within our own families, then we realize even we have so many stories, so many narratives that can be passed from one generation to the next.
mhm.
And that's why I said in the beginning that I'm very fascinated by even all those other African women who we do not know about in the history books, because they also have histories. And if we could start there, learn about African women. We should try and understand where are these African women coming from? What is this that that was so immense, that is so important, that was able, that cultural heritage that was even able to be carried over the New World, right? On the Black Atlantic. It's not only the way we dress, but it's also the way we eat. It's the way we speak, right? It's the kind of it's how we do our hair that was passed on from one generation to the next. Is how we behave when we're in in certain places that has been passed from one generation to the next, right? And
Mhm.
these are all things that we learn at home. So we should start teaching ourselves about our own African history. We should start learning the importance of our history, that
Do
through
we have
history.
books? do you have books that you can, I mean, do you have some books also you can recommend us, especially for the women who are listening? And I would definitely also want to go follow some of those books. Do you have some books you can recommend us? And if yes, which of those books are your favorite books?
So as I said, my favorite books are of course the books from Wangari Maathai, but I am sure there are other African women who are also have been writing literature and have been writing books about their own experiences. I a lot of book. I have a lot of books on many authors, from the U.S. African American women. Toni Morrison, I think, is an incredible writer. Angela Davis, that's another woman that I really feel that one can learn about. And even the Clenor Wims, who is talking about Africana womanism. That is also one place or one book that one can read, and it takes you back to your history, and it takes you back to understand that all these divisions are actually divisions to break the Black woman, right? And I'm sure also in your own country there must be some women, and women that we don't know about that have written something or have talked about. There's I forget her name, but I saw her on Facebook. I think she's Nigerian. I forget her name. I think she's called Nana someone. I'm sorry if that's not the name. But even the way she speaks, and that I think was in the 60s or even before. Genau. Yeah, Mekatili. All these incredible women, if we read about them, and read them with an African lens, not with this orocentric lens that tries to show
I
you,
like
they are
that.
weak.
I like that with an African lens.
Yeah,
I like that. That's good. That's a good
yeah,
one. That's a
yeah,
good one. Because if not, we are going to go back again to the same play.
yeah.
I have a question for you. This is a question I ask all of the speakers. If you were a tree, which of the trees would you be, and why?
Oh, um, maybe a mango tree, because
Okay.
it gives you shade, which the African woman does, protecting and shading our communities.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you the fruit, which satisfies you and gives you health and gives you the nutrition you need, which is what the African woman does. And
Wow. This is amazing. Amazing. Thank you. So if you were a color, which of the colors would you be and why?
I will be black.
Okay, why?
Yeah. Because I think it's a color of power.
Mhm.
I think it's a power that you can. It's able to transform itself in so many different things.
Okay.
It's able to mix with so many different things that other colors might not be able to. As
Wow.
I said, if the Black woman is the mother of all races, then you can see that we've produced everything, right? So, and I mean black not in terms of the skin color, but I mean black like in the color, that it can be
Mhm.
mixed with so many different things, which I always think
Mhm.
that not with a Black woman.
We are gradually coming to the end of it. If you were an animal, which animal would you be?
I'll be a panther.
I don't want to ask why, but I have to ask why. Why?
Because it's it's an animal that is very quiet, but when it hits you the hardest. And that
That's
is what a lot of people undermine or don't understand about Black women. They think we are very soft, or they think that we are very silent, but once we bite, we are revolutionaries.
hmm. Thank you so very much, ma'am. We have Jennifer Kramer who is saying
That's
that,
my mother.
yes, I thought of it.
Hello, mama.
Religion has been used as a tool to silence Black women for centuries. That is true, ma'am. Thank you
Yeah.
very much, ma'am Jennifer. It's a privilege to have you and have this wonderful daughter that you have given to the world. Ma'am, doctor, we are coming to the end of the program gradually. Now you have a few minutes to tell us how can we help the victims of racism overcome them step by step.
By making sure that we give them spaces to talk about it, and that
Mhm,
understanding that what we experience is not one experience but different experiences, and it's exactly these different experiences that make us unique, not only as
mhm,
Black people but also as a community of different peoples.
mhm,
And that we should we should learn that together we can be able to achieve more than when we work against each other. We have our own history, we have our own roots, and we should not forget that, because if we forget our culture, if we forget our roots and our histories, then we are going to be a lost people. And the next generation is even going to have it even more harder than the generations before. So in order for us to be able to do that, we have to go back into into our own African cultures and understand how far we have come.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jerry. We are coming to the end, and I'm giving you a few minutes now to tell us your last words. And I want you to connect that with your work in the community. I know that you're an activist. I also know that you campaigned for the last municipal election that took part, and I know you're very, very engaged in the community. So find a way to counsel us and tell us, what should we do as Black women? Before we get there, I want to welcome all those who are here on board with us. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I really appreciate you all for taking out your time, because I think that you're giving us the gift of your time, and we want to say thank you very much. We do appreciate you. Thank you, Millie. Thank you, Charity, Jennifer, Mary, One Free. Thank you very much. For all those who are here, I can't call you all by names, but I really appreciate you very, 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 very well, because I know that we are here because you are there. And I'm very sure, Mary, be very sure I have to get you here on board for an interview, because I think that the way you were intervening today shows that the history, you really love it. So, ma'am, the microphone back to you. Tell us, counsel us, please. What do we do as Black women? Because we're coming to the end of the program.
I think it's important that our foremothers and those who are there before us, that they should continue telling us these narratives. They should continue holding us. They should continue guiding us and giving us advice, and being mentors, and also being the gatekeepers of our cultures and our narratives. And as I said when I was campaigning for the Klima Fund, that I've only been able to be here, or I'm just following the footsteps of this great woman, Wangari Maathai. And so that is also one way that we can continue that lineage of wonderful and incredible and phenomenal women. And also I would like to say that I would like to start having discussions with more African women. So this year, or in October and in November, I'm organizing a conference with called Geschichtsverein, and which Mary and Charity are also going to be part of. Where we'll be giving African women the chance to talk about their experiences, and that people can also know everything is not about academia, but also women from the community have a voice, and that voice should be heard. So from October, if anybody is interested, please DM me, and then we can add you. Because of the coronavirus, we can't have so many people, but it's going to be online, and then we can send you the link, and you can also be part of that discussion. I think it's an important discussion, in particular here in Germany, because there's that platform for Black women to speak about their experiences, and for Black women to come together and be able to speak in one language or in different languages is not given. So I am hoping to have as many Black women as possible, and active people, active Black women who would also want to listen and be part of that great conversation. And so I would like to thank everybody who has accepted to be part of the conference. It's also another way of accepting a young African scholar into the circle of sisterhood, not only from the academic point, but also from a social and cultural point. So I'm very thankful for that. And once again, I want to say thank you for everybody who voted for Klima Fund. Thank you for everyone who who called and who motivated and who supported. And as I said, it would not have been possible without, again, the African women as the backbone of the whole thing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jerry. And we're coming to the end of the program. We want to appreciate all of you. Next week, same time, we're going to be having a conversation with Wambi Rose, who is going to be telling us the role of books in racism. And ladies and gentlemen, I leave you and hope to see you next week, same time. God bless you, and bye-bye.